The unlikely hero Timothy slouched through the bustling alien marketplace, his keen eyes scanning the kaleidoscope of beings from across the galaxy. His tattered clothes and unkempt appearance belied the immense power lurking beneath. For a week, he had embraced the life of a vagrant on this backwater planet, seeking any spark of challenge in his monotonous existence. The cacophony of alien languages and the pungent aroma of exotic foods assaulted his senses. Timothy scratched his scraggly beard, grimacing at the layer of grime coating his fingers. He had certainly nailed the homeless look, but the constant itch was becoming more irritating than challenging. "Maybe I should have tried being a mime instead," he muttered, earning confused glances from nearby vendors. At least then he'd have an excuse not to talk to people. A commotion near the center of the marketplace caught his attention. Timothy's eyes narrowed as he spotted a group of burly mercenaries surrounding a woman and child. The woman's sapphire skin and flowing pink hair stood out even in this diverse crowd. She held her daughter close, her posture regal despite the fear evident in her eyes. Timothy's lips curled into a smirk. Finally, something interesting. He sauntered closer, catching snippets of the confrontation. "Come now, Princess Adelina," a scarred mercenary growled, his tentacles writhing menacingly. "The Empire's bounty on you and the little one is too good to pass up. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Adelina's voice was ice. "I'd rather die than return to that gilded cage. You'll have to kill me first." "That can be arranged," another mercenary sneered, reaching for his blaster. Timothy's mind raced, concocting a suitably ridiculous challenge. 3 seconds, hands only, perfect, he thought. "Hey, fellas," he called out, his voice slurring slightly for effect. "How about a little show?" The mercenaries turned, confusion quickly morphing into amusement at the sight of the disheveled human. "Beat it, beggar," the leader spat. "This doesn't concern you." Timothy stumbled forward, feigning drunkenness. "Oh, come on. I bet I could take all of you down in, let's say, 3 seconds with just my hands." Raucous laughter erupted from the group. Even Adelina looked at him like he'd sprouted a second head. "You hear that, boys?" The leader chuckled. "Looks like we've got ourselves a comedian." Timothy grinned, counting down in his head. 3, 2, 1. In a blur of motion almost too fast for the eye to follow, Timothy struck. His hands became a whirlwind, delivering precise blows that sent mercenaries flying in all directions. Bodies crumpled to the ground in rapid succession, accompanied by the sickening crunch of broken bones and pained groans. True to his word, exactly 3 seconds later, Timothy stood amid a sea of unconscious mercenaries. He cracked his knuckles, a look of mild disappointment on his face. "Ha," he mused. "That was actually easier than I thought. Maybe I should have tried it blindfolded." Adelina gaped at him, her azure features a mix of awe and disbelief. Her daughter peeked out from behind her legs, eyes wide with wonder. "Who? What are you?" Adelina stammered. Timothy shrugged, plucking a couple of strange, spiky fruits from a nearby stall. He tossed one to the vendor, who was too stunned to object. "Just a guy looking for a good time," he replied, taking a bite of the fruit. He grimaced at the sour taste. "Though I'm starting to think I picked the wrong planet for that." He turned to leave, already contemplating his next self-imposed challenge. Maybe he'd try to overthrow a dictator using only bad puns and interpretive dance. "Wait," Adelina called out, her voice tinged with desperation. She grabbed his arm, her touch sending an unexpected jolt through Timothy's body. He turned, raising an eyebrow at the contact. Adelina's eyes darted around nervously. "We need your help. The Galactic Empire won't stop hunting us. I can be your concubine if you'll protect us." Timothy blinked, then burst out laughing. Adelina recoiled, clearly offended. Sorry, he said, wiping tears from his eyes. "It's just, a concubine, really? That's way too easy and boring." Adelina's brow furrowed. "Easy? Boring? I'll have you know I'm considered one of the most desirable." "I'm sure you are," Timothy interrupted, still chuckling. But that doesn't sound like a challenge at all. I'm looking for adventure, not a palace filled with silk and jewels. Adelina's expression shifted from offense to a deep concern. You don't understand. The Empire will kill us. They've already destroyed my home. If you don't help us, we won't survive. Her voice broke slightly, and Timothy felt a pang of guilt. The child's innocent eyes looked up at him, filled with fear. Okay, I'll help, he said, raising his hands in surrender. But let's skip the whole concubine thing, all right? I'm more into saving the day than longing in a palace. Adelina nodded, her relief palpable. Thank you. I'll do anything you ask. We just need to get off this planet. All right, here's the plan, Timothy said, his mind racing with possibilities. First, we need to get you some decent clothes. I can't have a princess looking like, well, you know. And then we'll need a ship. Do you know anyone who can help with that? Adelina's eyes lit up with hope. I do. My friend Jax runs a small shipping company. If we can reach him, he'll help us. Then that's where we're headed, Timothy replied, determination flooding through him. Just stay close and let me do the talking. I have a knack for getting out of sticky situations. As they made their way through the bustling marketplace, Timothy felt a surge of purpose he hadn't experienced in years. Maybe this would be the adventure he'd been searching for after all. A deal with the stars. Timothy brushed off his hands, glancing at the mercenaries sprawled on the ground. The marketplace buzzed with renewed energy as onlookers erupted into cheers and applause, a mix of relief and astonishment in their voices. The sight of a scruffy human taking down a group of hardened mercenaries ignited an unexpected spark of admiration among the crowd. Timothy couldn't help but bask in the moment, a crooked grin spreading across his face as he acknowledged the crowd with a half-hearted bow. Adelina stood frozen, her azure features a mixture of awe and disbelief. As the cheers echoed around them, she stepped forward, her daughter peeking out from behind her legs, wide-eyed with wonder. Who? What are you? Adelina stammered, her voice tinged with a combination of fear and gratitude. Timothy shrugged, plucking a couple of strange, spiky fruits from a nearby stall. He tossed one to the vendor, who was still too stunned to object. Just a guy looking for a good time, he replied, taking a bite of the fruit. He grimaced at the sour taste, though it was better than the fear and grime that had been building up in his mouth. He turned to leave, already contemplating his next self-imposed challenge. Maybe he could try to overthrow a dictator using only bad puns and interpretive dance. That would be a sight to see, he mused to himself, a chuckle escaping his lips. Wait. Adelina called out, her voice laced with desperation. She reached out, grabbing his arm, her touch sending an unexpected jolt through Timothy's body. He turned, raising an eyebrow at the contact, surprised by the intensity of her grip. Adelina's eyes darted around nervously, scanning the chaotic marketplace as if the mercenaries might rise again at any moment. We need your help, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The Galactic Empire won't stop hunting us. I can be your concubine if you'll protect us. Timothy blinked, taken aback. He burst out laughing, the absurdity of her offer breaking the tension in the air. Sorry, he said, wiping tears from his eyes. It's just a concubine, really? That's way too easy and boring. Adelina's brow furrowed, her expression shifting from desperation to indignation. Easy, boring, she echoed, as if trying to comprehend the implications of his dismissal. Do you know what it means to live under constant threat? To have your life controlled by someone else? Timothy's laughter faded as he met her gaze, the fire in her eyes igniting a sense of understanding within him. Look, I'm just a guy passing through, he said, his tone softer now. I'm not really looking for complications, or a relationship. Adelina's shoulders slumped, and her daughter stepped out from behind her, clutching a small alien toy. The child's innocent eyes reflected a mix of admiration and fear. But you're strong, the girl said, her voice small but clear. You can protect us, right? Timothy felt a pang in his chest at the girl's earnestness. Yeah, I'm strong, he replied, scratching the back of his head. But strength isn't everything. I can't just take on an entire empire on a whim. Adelina looked at him with a mix of hope and despair. You don't understand. I am the last of my kind. If they find us, they will use me to control what remains of my people. My daughter, she deserves a chance to live freely, away from the shadows of oppression. Timothy took a deep breath, weighing the gravity of her words. He hadn't signed up for this. Defending a princess and a child against a galactic empire was not part of his plan. But as he watched Adelina's determination and the innocent hope in her daughter's eyes, something shifted inside him. Perhaps this was the challenge he had been seeking all along. Fine, he said, surprising himself. I'll help you, but this won't be easy. We'll need a plan, and you're going to have to tell me everything you know about the Empire and what they want. Adelina's face brightened with a flicker of hope, her posture shifting from defeat to resolve. Thank you. I promise you won't regret this, she replied, her voice gaining strength. They stepped away from the marketplace, slipping into a narrow alleyway to escape the prying eyes of the crowd. Timothy glanced around, making sure they weren't being followed. Where do we go from here? He asked, turning to Adelina. We need to find a safe place to regroup, she said, her expression serious. I know of an old hideout not far from here. It used to be a safe haven for my people before the Empire came. Timothy nodded, determination brewing within him. Lead the way, princess. Let's find this hideout and figure out our next move. And by the way, no more concubine talk. Just call me your bodyguard for now. Adelina smirked slightly, her sapphire skin shimmering under the dim light of the alley. Deal, bodyguard. But just so you know, I might still take you up on that offer later. Timothy chuckled, a sense of camaraderie blossoming between them as they ventured into the unknown. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And as the two unlikely allies navigated the treacherous streets, Timothy felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something extraordinary. The hideout. The air grew heavier as Timothy and Adelina made their way through the labyrinthine back alleys of the bustling alien city. Shadows danced around them, cloaking the vibrant chaos of the marketplace in an eerie quiet. The faint echoes of vendors hawking their wares and children playing faded into the background, leaving only the sound of their footsteps against the gritty ground. Adelina led the way with a purposeful stride, her demeanor shifting from vulnerable to resolute. Are you sure this hideout is safe? Timothy asked, trying to keep pace. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting the mercenaries to spring back to life, their bruised egos compelling them to pursue him and Adelina with a vengeance. Yes, she replied, glancing back with a hint of a smile. It's hidden from the Empire's eyes. My people used it as a sanctuary during the darkest days of our existence. The entrance is concealed behind an abandoned factory just up ahead. Timothy nodded, appreciating her confidence, but feeling a nagging doubt in the back of his mind. He had faced down mercenaries with brute force, but the challenges ahead would require more than strength. As they approached the dilapidated building, he felt the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. Protecting a princess and her child was more than a mere challenge. It was a responsibility he had never asked for. The factory loomed before them, a relic of a bygone era. Rusting metal and shattered glass spoke of neglect and abandonment, but to Timothy, it was a sanctuary. Looks like a perfect place for a secret hideout, he remarked, taking in the decay. Let's hope it's not also a perfect place for spiders or worse. Trust me, Adelina said, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of nostalgia and determination. We'll be safe here. Timothy followed her through a crumbling doorway, the air inside thick with dust and the scent of damp earth. The interior was dimly lit, but as Adelina led the way deeper into the factory, the glimmer of bioluminescent moss illuminated their path, casting an otherworldly glow across the walls. Timothy couldn't help but marvel at the beauty of the alien flora, which had somehow thrived amidst the decay. Wow, this place is amazing. he exclaimed, stopping to examine the vibrant moss. "It's like nature's own art installation." Adelina smiled at his enthusiasm. "This moss was cultivated by my people. We always believed in finding beauty even in the darkest places. It served as a reminder of hope." "Hope?" Timothy echoed, a sense of weight settling over him. It was a word he had almost forgotten. They ventured deeper, the narrow corridors twisting and turning until they reached a spacious chamber. In the center stood a large circular platform adorned with intricate carvings that told stories of Adelina's people, the Aridian. Their history was painted in vibrant colors, tales of unity and resistance against the oppressive forces of the Galactic Empire. Adelina stepped forward, brushing her fingers against the carvings. "This was once a meeting place for our leaders," she said, her voice softening. "We gathered here to strategize and find ways to protect our people. Now," she hesitated, the weight of her memories bearing down on her. "Now it's just a reminder of what we've lost." Timothy approached her, instinctively placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We'll get it back," he said, his voice steady. "But first, we need to come up with a plan. What do you know about the Empire's movements?" Adelina nodded, straightening her posture. "The Empire has been relentless. They sent bounty hunters across the galaxy, searching for any trace of me and my daughter. They believe that capturing us will help them regain control over my people. The Empire doesn't just want power, they want to crush any hope we have left." Timothy clenched his fists, a fire igniting within him. "We can't let that happen. But how do we stop them? We're just two people and a kid against an entire empire." "There may be others who are willing to help," Adelina replied, her eyes sparkling with renewed hope. "There are underground networks, rebels and sympathizers who oppose the Empire's tyranny. If we can reach out to them, we may find the allies we need to mount a resistance." Timothy's brow furrowed as he considered the enormity of their task. How do we find these rebels? And how do we convince them to help us? Adelina's expression brightened as she began to explain. "There's a contact named Varric. He's an old friend of my family and a leader among the resistance. He has connections and resources, but getting to him will be risky. He operates in the heart of the Empire's territory." Timothy took a deep breath, weighing the risks. "And what if we get caught? We'll be walking right into a trap." "I know the risks," she assured him, "but we have to try. For my daughter and for my people, we cannot afford to hide forever. This is our chance." Timothy considered her words, feeling a swell of determination rising within him. "Okay, we'll find Varric. But first, we need to secure this place. If the Empire finds us here, we're done for." As they began to strategize, Timothy gathered supplies from the hidden chambers, while Adelina shared stories about her people's culture, each tale a thread weaving a deeper connection between them. The stories of love, sacrifice, and resilience painted a vivid picture of the Aridian heritage that Timothy couldn't help but respect. After hours of preparation, Timothy felt a sense of purpose settling over him. The weight of his earlier doubts lifted as he realized that this was more than just a challenge. It was a chance to do something meaningful. "Let's get some rest," he suggested finally, looking at the worn-out Adelina and the sleeping child curled up on a makeshift bed of soft moss. "We'll need our strength for tomorrow. It's going to be a long day." Adelina nodded, a look of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Timothy, for everything." He waved her off, the corners of his mouth tugging upward. "Just doing what I do best. Being a pain in the ass. Helping." As they settled down for the night, the soft glow of the bioluminescent moss bathed the chamber in warmth, creating an atmosphere that felt both safe and inviting. Timothy closed his eyes, his mind racing with thoughts of the challenges that lay ahead. He had a mission now, one that transcended the mundane trials of his previous life. He would protect Adelina and her daughter, and together they would rise against the darkness threatening to consume them. Outside, the stars twinkled in the sky, a testament to the vastness of the universe and the struggles yet to unfold. But within the heart of the old factory, amidst the remnants of a once proud civilization, a flicker of hope ignited, ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy had in store for them. Allies in shadows. The dawn broke with an ethereal glow, bathing the remnants of the factory in shades of orange and gold. Timothy stirred from his restless sleep, the tension of their precarious situation lingering in his mind. He opened his eyes, momentarily disoriented by the softness of the moss beneath him. Adelina was already awake, her gaze fixed on the sleeping child, whose small features reflected a peace they had not yet achieved. "Good morning," she whispered, sensing Timothy's awakening. Her voice was gentle, yet it carried the weight of their shared purpose. "Morning," he replied, sitting up and stretching. The uncertainty of their mission flooded back to him like a tide, and he took a moment to gather his thoughts. "What's our plan for today?" Adelina's expression grew serious. "Today, we find Varric. He's our best chance at assembling a coalition strong enough to oppose the Empire. I know I said we need to reach out to him, but the journey to his location is dangerous. It's in the heart of the city, where the Empire's presence is strongest." Timothy nodded, feeling the familiar spark of adrenaline surge through him. "So, we'll have to be smart about this. Stealth is key." They spent the morning gathering supplies and discussing strategies, with Adelina providing Timothy with vital information about the city layout and potential escape routes. As they prepared, Timothy felt a growing respect for Adelina. She was not just a princess, but a warrior at heart, driven by the love for her child and her people. After a modest breakfast of dried fruits and water, they set out, leaving the sanctuary of the factory behind. The city was alive with energy, but this time Timothy felt a sense of purpose guiding him through the crowded streets. Adelina led him through narrow alleyways and past bustling markets, her keen eyes scanning for potential threats. "Stay close," she murmured, keeping her voice low. "We can't draw attention to ourselves." As they navigated the winding streets, Timothy couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between the vibrant marketplace and the desolation hidden within the shadows. Brightly colored stalls overflowed with exotic fruits, intricate textiles, and curious artifacts from distant worlds. Yet beneath the surface, he sensed an underlying tension, a fear that permeated the air as if the very fabric of the city was held together by fragile threads. Suddenly, a commotion erupted nearby, drawing their attention. A group of armed mercenaries had cornered a vendor, their voices loud and menacing. "You'll pay your dues, or we'll take what we want," one of them growled, brandishing a weapon. The vendor trembled, visibly terrified, and Timothy felt a surge of anger rising within him. "Should we help?" he whispered, his instincts urging him to intervene. "No," Adelina replied, her voice steady but firm. "We can't risk exposure. If we get caught in the crossfire, it'll be over for us." Timothy's heart sank as he watched the vendor bow his head, helpless in the face of oppression. "This isn't right," he muttered under his breath. "I know," Adelina said softly, her eyes reflecting a deep-seated pain. "But our time will come. We have to stay focused on our mission. If we can reach Varric, we might be able to help people like him in the long run." With a heavy heart, Timothy turned away, forcing himself to move forward. The sight of the vendor's defeat lingered in his mind, a reminder of the stakes at hand. They continued their journey, weaving through the bustling crowd until they reached a decrepit tavern hidden in a narrow alley. "This is it," Adelina said, gesturing toward the dimly lit entrance. "Varric frequents this place. We need to be cautious. The tavern is often frequented by Empire informants." As they stepped inside, the musty air enveloped them, and the faint scent of alien spices and stale beer filled their nostrils. The interior was dimly lit, the only light coming from flickering holographic advertisements for various illicit wares. Patrons huddled at tables, their voices a low murmur as they exchanged whispers of rebellion and survival. "Keep your head down and stay close," Adelina instructed, scanning the room. "We'll need to find a way to signal Varric without drawing attention." Timothy nodded, his senses heightened as they maneuvered through the tight space. His eyes flicked from one group of patrons to another, noting the wary glances exchanged between them. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and he could feel the weight of their desperation hanging in the air. Suddenly, Adelina's eyes widened, and she subtly gestured for him to follow her toward a dimly lit corner table. Seated, there was a tall figure draped in a dark cloak, his features obscured by the shadows. Timothy's instincts kicked in, sensing that this was their contact. "Varric?" Adelina asked quietly as they approached. The cloaked figure lifted his gaze, revealing sharp features and piercing blue eyes. "Adelina," he said, his voice smooth yet commanding. "I feared I would never see you again." "I need your help," she replied, urgency lacing her words. "The Empire is hunting me and my child. We need allies to fight back." Varric's expression hardened as he took in her words. "The Empire's grip tightens every day. We've been struggling to maintain any semblance of resistance. Your return could change everything, but it's dangerous. The bounty on your head is substantial." Timothy felt a mix of admiration and concern. The tension in Varric's posture was palpable. He was clearly a man who had seen the worst of the Empire's wrath. "We need a plan," Timothy interjected, leaning forward. "If we're going to stand a chance, we can't waste time." Varric studied Timothy, his eyes narrowing. "And who are you to speak of plans? A human in the heart of Iridian affairs. This is not a game, soldier." Adelina placed a hand on Timothy's arm, a gesture of support. "He's not just a soldier. He saved my life, and he's willing to fight alongside us. We need every able hand we can find." Varric hesitated, then leaned back in his chair. "Very well, but if you're going to join us, you must understand the risks. We'll need to gather intelligence on the Empire's movements, and we'll need to strike before they can solidify their control over the city." Timothy felt a surge of determination. "What do you need us to do?" Varric studied him for a moment before continuing. "There's a shipment of weapons coming in tonight. If we can intercept it, we can arm our people and gain a significant advantage. But we'll need to be quick and silent. The Empire has eyes everywhere." Adelina nodded, her resolve evident. "We're in." "Good," Varric replied, his expression softening slightly. "Meet me here at sunset. I'll gather the necessary equipment and gather a few more allies. But know this, failure is not an option. The Empire cannot discover our plans." As they left the tavern, Timothy felt a weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The stakes had never been higher, and the challenges ahead would test them in ways he could hardly fathom. He glanced at Adelina, who walked beside him, her determination shining through even amidst the uncertainty. "We can do this," he said, his voice steady. "Together." Adelina smiled, and for a moment, the weight of their mission felt a little lighter. Together. The sun hung low in the sky as they retraced their steps back through the city, a fiery orb casting long shadows that danced around them. As they navigated the maze of streets, Timothy couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the precipice of something monumental. The city pulsed with life, but within it lay a darkness that threatened to consume everything they held dear. As they arrived back at the factory hideout, Timothy's mind raced with thoughts of the impending mission. They had a chance to turn the tide, to push back against the Empire's relentless advance, but he knew they would have to tread carefully. "Let's prepare," he said as they stepped inside the sanctuary. "We'll need weapons and supplies for the ambush tonight." Adelina nodded, her gaze turning serious. "And we need to keep my daughter safe. She'll be our priority." With that unspoken bond solidified between them, they began to gather what they could. Timothy rummaged through the remnants of the factory, searching for anything that could aid them in their fight. As he worked, he felt a sense of purpose blossoming within him, an undeniable call to arms against the darkness threatening to envelop them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in hues of deep purple and blue, they were ready. Timothy felt the adrenaline coursing through him, each beat of his heart echoing with the promise of hope and resistance. It was time to reclaim what was lost, to rise against the Empire and fight for a future where fear and oppression held no power. Together, they would stand against the shadows, ready to face whatever awaited them in the night. The echoes of rebellion. The night descended upon the city like a velvet shroud, cloaking the streets in darkness. Timothy, Adelina, and Varric stood at the entrance of the factory, their hearts pounding in rhythm with the distant sounds of the bustling metropolis. The air was charged with anticipation, the weight of their mission hanging heavy around them. As they prepared to embark on their daring plan, each knew they were stepping into the very heart of danger. "Are you ready?" Varric's voice cut through the silence, steady and commanding. He adjusted the straps of the satchel slung across his shoulder, filled with makeshift weapons and explosives. The glint of determination in his blue eyes reflected the stakes of their endeavor. Timothy nodded, glancing at Adelina, who stood resolutely beside him, her expression a mixture of bravery and concern. "We have no choice," he said, his voice low but firm. "We need to show the Empire that we won't be silenced." With a deep breath, the trio moved into the night, slipping through the shadows that hugged the alleyways. The streets were quieter now, the sounds of the marketplace replaced by an eerie stillness that suggested the city was holding its breath. As they maneuvered through the labyrinth of narrow passageways, Timothy felt the weight of history pressing upon him. This city, once vibrant and full of life, now bore the scars of oppression and fear. Varric led the way, his keen instincts guiding them through the less traveled routes. "We'll approach from the east side of the docks," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant hum of machinery. "There's a narrow passage that will take us directly to the warehouse where the shipment will arrive." Timothy followed closely, his mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. He had never imagined himself in such a situation, yet here he was, standing shoulder to shoulder with a princess and a seasoned rebel. The gravity of their mission was not lost on him. They were fighting for the future of an entire world. As they neared the docks, the atmosphere shifted. The salty breeze carried with it the scent of the ocean, mingling with the metallic tang of industry. Timothy's heart pounded in his chest as they approached the warehouse, its silhouette looming in the distance. The rhythmic clang of machinery echoed through the night, punctuated by the occasional shout from the guards patrolling the perimeter. "Stay low and stick to the shadows," Varric instructed, his voice a whisper of authority. "We'll wait until we see the shipment arrive before making our move." They crouched behind a stack of crates, peering into the dimly lit expanse of the dock. The warehouse loomed large, its darkened windows casting ominous shadows. Timothy's pulse quickened as he observed the guards milling about, their weapons glinting under the flickering lights. Each guard was a reminder of the Empire's iron grip on the city, but Timothy felt an unwavering resolve building within him. "Look," Adelina murmured, pointing toward the entrance of the warehouse. A cargo ship had begun to dock, the sound of its engines roaring against the backdrop of the night. Heavy machinery clanked and screeched as it moved crates onto the pier, and Timothy could see silhouettes moving within the shadows of the ship. "We need to act quickly," Varric urged, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the scene. "Once the guards get distracted, that'll be our chance." The three of them huddled closer together, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they prepared for the moment of action. Timothy's breath quickened as he caught sight of the cargo being unloaded. He could make out the shape of large crates marked with the Empire's insignia. Each crate held weapons that could tip the scales of power in their favor. "Now," Varric hissed as the guards turned their attention to the cargo being unloaded. Without a moment's hesitation, they darted from their hiding spot, adrenaline propelling them forward. Timothy felt the rush of freedom and fear mingle within him as they sprinted toward the warehouse. He could hear the distant shouts of the guards, but their voices faded into the background, replaced by the pounding of his heart and the thrill of rebellion. As they reached the entrance, Varric kicked the door open with a force that sent it swinging wide. The interior was dimly lit, filled with crates stacked haphazardly, each one holding potential for their cause. "Grab as much as you can," Varric shouted, urgency dripping from his words. Timothy rushed to a nearby crate, prying it open to reveal an assortment of blasters and ammunition. He quickly began loading the gear into his satchel, adrenaline fueling his movements. "We need to make this fast," he yelled, scanning the room for more supplies. He caught sight of Adelina, her face set with determination as she hoisted a blaster of her own, the weight of it not deterring her resolve. In that moment, a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by the unmistakable sounds of chaos. The guards had discovered their presence. "They're onto us," Varric shouted. "We need to secure the exits." Timothy's heart raced as he took in the scene. He moved toward a window overlooking the docks and peered outside. The guards were gathering in formation, weapons raised and ready. "We have to hold them off while we get out of here," he shouted, adrenaline surging through his veins. Adelina and Varric joined him at the window, weapons drawn. "There are too many of them," Adelina said, a flicker of worry crossing her features. "No," Timothy replied, determination shining in his eyes. "We've come too far to back down now. We fight." Varric nodded, his face a mask of resolve. "We'll create a diversion. If we can draw their fire away from the back exit, we might have a chance." Without waiting for further discussion, Varric dashed to the opposite side of the room and grabbed a small device from one of the crates. "I'll set this to create a distraction. When it goes off, we move." Timothy took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their situation pressing upon him. The noise from outside grew louder, the guards yelling orders to one another. He could feel the tension rising, each second feeling like an eternity. Varric returned, a smirk on his face as he activated the device and tossed it toward the entrance. "Get ready," he called out. A blinding flash of light erupted in the doorway, followed by a deafening explosion that sent debris flying. The guards outside screamed, momentarily stunned by the chaos. Timothy seized the opportunity, adrenaline surging through him. "Now, move." They burst through the back exit, emerging into the cool night air just as the guards began to recover from the shock. Timothy could hear the cries of alarm echoing behind them, but they pressed forward, sprinting toward the cover of darkness. Adrenaline coursed through Timothy as they dashed through the alleyways, the chaos of the docks receding behind them. His heart raced with exhilaration, knowing they had successfully secured the weapons that could shift the balance of power. But their journey was far from over. "Keep moving," Adelina urged, her voice steady despite the urgency of their escape. "We need to get back to the hideout before they regroup." As they navigated through the darkened streets, Timothy felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had accomplished what many thought was impossible. They had struck a blow against the Empire, and for the first time, he felt the spark of hope igniting within him. The trio moved swiftly, each turn bringing them closer to their temporary sanctuary. As they rounded a corner, Timothy caught a glimpse of the factory, a beacon of hope rising against the night sky. "Almost there," he shouted, pushing himself harder. Just as they neared the entrance, the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Timothy turned, heart dropping as he spotted a group of guards pursuing them, their faces set in grim determination. "They're right behind us," he yelled, urgency gripping his words. "Inside. Now," Varric barked, urging them forward as they darted through the door. They slammed it shut, leaning against it, breathless and heart-pounding. "Quick, barricade the door," Adelina urged, her voice laced with anxiety. They scrambled to move crates and debris against the entrance, their hearts racing as they prepared for the impending confrontation. Moments later, the sound of boots thudded against the ground outside, and Timothy felt a surge of dread wash over him. "They're here," he muttered, gripping his blaster tightly. Varric's expression was grim as he positioned himself near the window, peering through the cracks in the barricade. "We need to hold them off until we can plan our next move," he said, determination etched across his face. Timothy's heart raced as the guards began banging on the door, their voices a chorus of anger and threats. "We know you're in there. Open up, and we can end this peacefully," one of them shouted. "Peacefully," Adelina scoffed, her eyes blazing with defiance. They don't want peace, they want control. Focus. Varric commanded, his voice sharp. We need a plan. Adelina, can you access the factory's control panel? We might be able to trigger a lockdown to slow them down. I'll try. Adelina replied, determination flashing in her eyes. She rushed toward the control panel situated at the far end of the room, fingers flying over the buttons as she worked to bypass security protocols. Timothy moved beside her, ready to defend her if necessary. Just be quick, he urged, his eyes darting to the door, which shook violently under the weight of the guards' efforts to breach it. As Adelina worked furiously, Varric positioned himself to cover their escape route, his eyes scanning for any signs of movement outside. They're getting through, he called out, adrenaline surging through him. Almost there, Adelina grunted, her brows furrowed in concentration. Just as she pressed a final button, the power in the room flickered ominously, and a loud siren blared, filling the air with a sense of urgency. Got it, she shouted triumphantly, and the door to the factory slammed shut, reinforced by steel shutters that descended from the ceiling. The guards outside pounded against the barriers, their frustrated cries muffled by the sounds of machinery around them. Now what? Timothy asked, his breath hitching in his throat. Now we wait, Varric replied, his eyes scanning the darkness beyond the barricade. But we're not out of danger yet. Adelina took a deep breath, steadying her nerves as the siren continued to blare. This lockdown should buy us some time, but we need to move quickly once the power comes back on. Timothy nodded, feeling a surge of hope. They had managed to secure their escape, at least for the moment, and that was something. But deep down, he knew that this was only the beginning of their fight against the Empire. As they huddled together, the weight of their choices pressing down upon them, Timothy realized that their rebellion had ignited a fire within him, one that would not easily be extinguished. They were no longer just a group of rebels. They had become a symbol of hope, and together, they would challenge the very foundations of oppression. But as the sounds of the guards continued to echo outside, Timothy couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest battles were yet to come. They were standing at the precipice of something monumental, and he was ready to fight for the future of their world. The dawn of defiance. As the siren's wail filled the factory, its harsh sound seemed to cut through the tension that had built up around them. Timothy, Adelina, and Varric stood together, surrounded by the barricade that separated them from the chaos outside. The initial rush of adrenaline had faded, leaving behind a heavy sense of urgency and anticipation. They could hear the guards outside shouting orders, their frustration palpable as they realized they were trapped. Timothy's eyes darted around the room, taking in their surroundings. The factory floor was cluttered with machinery, tools, and crates filled with supplies. Each item around him felt like a symbol of the Empire's oppression, and he couldn't help but think about how they could use these resources to further their cause. We need to figure out our next move, Varric said, his voice steady despite the noise outside. He scanned the room, his mind already racing with possibilities. This lockdown won't hold forever, and once they regroup, they'll find a way in. Agreed, Adelina said, her fingers still hovering over the control panel. But first, we need to make sure we can defend ourselves. If we're going to turn this factory into a stronghold, we need to arm ourselves properly. Timothy nodded, adrenaline surging through him again. Let's gather as much as we can. We can't rely on the lockdown to protect us indefinitely. He moved toward a nearby crate, throwing it open to reveal a collection of energy blasters, explosives, and tactical gear. The sight of them sent a thrill of purpose coursing through his veins. As he and Adelina began distributing the weapons, Varric moved to the control panel to assess their options. I can try to disable the security systems entirely, he said, glancing over the buttons and screens. That way, we'll have access to the entire factory, and we can use the machinery to our advantage. Timothy's heart raced. Do it. Whatever we can use to gain the upper hand, we have to try. While Varric focused on the control panel, Timothy and Adelina gathered supplies. They loaded their satchels with energy blasters, grenades, and anything else they could find. Timothy felt a sense of camaraderie building between them, a shared determination to fight for their freedom. As they prepared, Adelina's eyes lit up with a sudden idea. What if we set up a trap for the guards? We could lure them into the factory and use the machinery against them. If we can delay them long enough, we might be able to make our escape. Timothy's mind raced with possibilities. That could work. We just need to get them to chase us inside and then activate the machinery to create a blockade. Varric looked up from the control panel, excitement flickering in his eyes. We'll need to be quick. Once I disable the security systems, I can trigger a few machines to create some noise, drawing them in. Let's do it, Timothy urged, feeling the adrenaline surge through him. We don't have much time before they regroup and come after us. As Varric finished disabling the security systems, the sirens finally quieted, replaced by a heavy silence that hung in the air like a storm cloud. It's done, Varric said, his eyes narrowing as he looked toward the door. Let's set the trap. I'll activate the machines to create some distractions. The trio positioned themselves strategically around the factory, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they prepared to implement their plan. Varric activated a nearby conveyor belt, its mechanical whirring echoing through the silence. The sound would be enough to catch the guards' attention. Now we wait, Varric said, crouching behind a crate near the entrance. Timothy felt his heart pounding in his chest as he took his position beside Adelina. They could hear the muffled sounds of the guards outside, their angry shouts becoming more desperate as they realized their efforts to break through had been thwarted. Suddenly, the metallic clang of footsteps resonated through the factory, followed by the familiar voice of a guard barking orders. Form a line. We're going to breach that door. Timothy exchanged a glance with Adelina, their resolve hardening. This was their moment. As the guards prepared to storm the entrance, Varric silently pressed a button on the control panel, activating the machinery that would serve as their trap. The conveyor belt roared to life, moving crates with incredible speed, creating a cacophony that filled the factory. The guards outside faltered, their attention momentarily captured by the noise. Now, Varric yelled, and the three of them sprang into action. Adelina led the charge, her blaster aimed at the door as it swung open, revealing the guards who had just breached the threshold. The moment they entered, Adelina fired, her shot striking one of the guards squarely in the chest. He crumpled to the ground, and chaos erupted as the other guards rushed in, their weapons drawn. Timothy felt a rush of adrenaline as he joined the fight, firing at the guards as they stumbled into the factory. Varric positioned himself near the control panel, ready to activate the machinery to create a blockade. Keep them distracted, he shouted, sweat dripping down his brow. I'll trigger the machines. Timothy ducked behind a stack of crates, firing at the guards who were now disoriented by the noise. We won't let them take us, he shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. Adelina moved with fierce determination, her shots precise and effective as she took down another guard. We have to hold them off until Varric can set the trap, she urged, her voice steady despite the mounting pressure. Varric worked furiously at the control panel, his fingers flying over the buttons as he activated the factory's machinery. The sound of grinding metal filled the air as a large mechanical arm swung into action, creating a barrier between them and the advancing guards. Just as the guards began to regroup, Varric hit the final switch. The machinery rolled to life, creating a wall of crates and debris that separated them from the guards. Now, move, Varric yelled. Timothy and Adelina rushed to Varric's side, their hearts racing as they took cover behind the newly formed barricade. They could hear the guards shouting in frustration, their attempts to push through the obstacle proving futile. Is it enough? Adelina panted, catching her breath as they huddled together. For now, Varric replied, glancing around the factory. But we can't stay here. They'll find another way in. We need to find a way to signal the other rebels, Timothy said, his mind racing. We can't do this alone. We need to rally more support. Adelina nodded, her expression fierce. We need to let them know that we're still fighting. There must be a way to reach them through the communication system. Varric moved back to the control panel, his eyes scanning the options. If we can access the intercom system, we can broadcast a message to the other rebels in the area. They'll know we're still here, and they'll come to our aid. As Varric worked, Timothy could hear the guards regrouping, their shouts growing louder as they began to assess the situation. Hurry, he urged, glancing nervously toward the barricade. They'll find a way to break through. Varric's fingers flew over the control panel as he accessed the intercom system. I'm in, he said, his voice steady despite the mounting tension. I just need a moment to broadcast. Timothy took a deep breath, focusing on the guards outside. We need to be ready. Once Varric sends the message, we have to hold the line. Adelina nodded, gripping her blaster tightly. We won't let them take us without a fight. With one final keystroke, Varric activated the intercom. Attention, rebels of Varys. This is Varric of the Resistance. We are under siege in the factory near the docks. We need immediate backup. The Empire is closing in on us. We can't hold them off for long. If you can hear this, we need your help now. The response was immediate. Static crackled over the intercom, followed by the distant sounds of engines revving and voices calling out in solidarity. We're coming, a voice shouted back. Hold tight. Timothy felt a surge of hope wash over him. The other rebels were mobilizing, and they wouldn't let their fight die here. We can do this, he shouted, adrenaline coursing through him. We just need to hold on until they arrive. But as the guards outside began to find their footing, Timothy knew they would soon face the most challenging part of their fight. The barricade wouldn't hold forever, and they were outnumbered. He glanced at Adelina and Varric, their faces etched with determination. Whatever happens next, Timothy said, his voice steady, we fight together. We will not let the Empire silence us. As the guards began to push against the barricade, the tension in the air thickened. Timothy braced himself, ready for the confrontation that was about to unfold. In that moment, he knew they were not just fighting for their survival, they were fighting for the future of their world. The door began to creak under the pressure of the guards, and the sound echoed in Timothy's mind like a war drum. Here they come, he shouted, taking his position behind the barricade. Stay sharp, Varric called, adjusting his grip on his blaster. We're not out of this yet. With the echoes of their comrades rallying behind them and the weight of their shared resolve, the trio prepared to face whatever came next. The dawn of their defiance was at hand, and they would stand united against the darkness that threatened to consume them.